I was home alone when I found a terrifying secret in the closet. 3 true chilling tales await. I never should have opened that door. That thought buzzed in my head as I stood frozen in front of the closet, heart racing. The old wooden frame creaked, like a warning against my curiosity. Why did I even think it was a good idea? It started as a normal evening. I was sprawled on the couch, lost in a mindless TV show. The living room felt cozy, the hum of the screen wrapping me in a comfortable blanket of noise. But then the power flickered, and the glow faded into an ominous darkness that squeezed the air around me. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, like a breeze brushing through leaves, but I was alone. Or so I thought. That I inched towards the closet, the thick carpet muffling my steps. The air grew colder, prickling my skin. Shadows danced around me. Each heartbeat echoed in my ears. I tugged on the handle. It opened with a reluctant groan. Inside was a mess of old clothes, forgotten memories crushed beneath dust. But something caught my eye. A glimmer. Yes, a hint of silver deep within the folds. I reached in, fingers trembling. I felt cold metal, cool against my warm skin. A locket. I pulled it out, revealing intricate designs. My breath hitched. What kind of treasure was this? I opened it, expecting to see a beautiful face, but instead, it was empty. My chest tightened. It felt wrong, like a piece of someone's lost history. Then, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. I looked around, expecting to see someone behind me. But there was only darkness. That dull chill burrowed deeper into my bones. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the kitchen, rattling me to my core. I spun around, heart racing. The feeling of being watched washed over me like ice water. That I took a shaky step back, the locket still clutched in my hand. I could hear my own breath, quick and shallow. The shadows in the room thickened, and I felt a presence, lurking just outside my vision. My imagination spiraled out of control. Just then, a cold wind blasted through the living room, rattling the pictures on the walls. The closet door swung shut, the finality of that creak sending chills down my spine. I could feel eyes upon me. My heart was a drum, pounding in my ears. What was that? I turned back towards the closet, now filled with even darker shadows. The dread settled in my gut like a stone. The whispers grew louder, curling around me like tendrils, pulling me closer. I backed away, each step feeling heavier. Then, I saw it, a dark figure just inside the closet, barely illuminated by the flickering light. It felt like a nightmare, solid and real. I blinked, hoping it would disappear. It didn't. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The air went thick with silence. Every sense screamed for me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Just as the figure stepped forward, the room exploded in a flash of light and a terrifying roar, like the world was coming to an end. That it was gone, but I knew it was still there, lurking in the shadows. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My breath caught in my throat as the echo of the roar faded, leaving behind a suffocating silence that pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I blinked, forcing myself to stay grounded in reality. The room, once alive with sounds, had turned into a hushed tomb, each creak of the house amplified in the void. My heart drummed a frantic rhythm as confusion danced with a primal fear within me. That I backed away from the closet, feeling its pull like a magnet, the emptiness gnawing at the edges of my mind. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a disorienting stillness. I turned back toward the living room, where even shadows seemed to pulse with the weight of unspoken dread. Suddenly, a chill washed over me, the temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. Something was wrong, profoundly wrong. Then, a whisper broke through the stifling silence. "Help me." It sounded like a plea, desperate and sorrowful, rippling through the air like a fog. I spun towards the sound, which seemed to swirl around me, but it was too quiet, too close, like it was tightening around my throat. I swallowed hard, a metallic taste in my mouth. Driven by a morbid curiosity and an almost overpowering urge to flee, I approached the closet again. The door loomed, its wood splintered and darkened by time. I hesitated, and then, forcing myself to muster any ounce of bravery, I pulled it open once more. The contents had shifted. Chaos among the clothes greeted me. It was as if the darkness had taken a physical form, rearranging the very fabric of the closet. A discarded shoe lay tipped over, and a clock that hung on the wall had stopped at precisely 3:33. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I peered deeper into the shadows, feeling as though they were watching me, waiting. As I leaned in, my fingers brushed against something cool and metal again, the same locket. I pulled it out, but my heart sank. This one was different. It was still closed, the intricate designs marred by eerie scratches, as if it had been clawed at by something desperate. Before I could think, I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Inside was not just emptiness but an image, a ghostly figure, a woman with hollow eyes and a face twisted in despair. She seemed to reach out from inside the locket, her lips moving soundlessly as if trying to voice a warning or a cry for help. The darkness seemed to swell, pressing against me. I stumbled back, letting the locket slip from my hands. It fell to the ground and shattered, the pieces scattering like a confetti of dread. When the temperature dropped even further, turning my breath into visible mist. The whispers returned, sharper now, mingling with mocking laughter that echoed from all corners of the room. I turned to run, but my legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot as they sang of impending doom. Suddenly, the closet door slammed shut with a thunderous bang, causing items from the shelves to clatter to the ground. I wheeled around, frantically scanning the room, the feeling of being watched intensifying as the laughing morphed into a cacophony of voices, overlapping and sinister. They were speaking, no, chanting. The words melted into one another, and I could feel their icy breath on my neck. It was then I saw her, the woman from the locket. No longer a mere image, she stood in the living room, her eyes black pits radiating endless sorrow, a hand outstretched towards me, her mouth moving with horrifying urgency. "Find me, before it's too late." Before I could react, a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind, icy and unwavering. I spun, ready to confront my next horror, and gasped in horror. But it was only my own reflection in the mirror, pale and wide-eyed, the last vestiges of my sanity slipping away with the cracks of my world. As the room began to swirl, collapsing around my sanity, I wondered if I would be next to vanish into the shadows, joining the specters that haunted this cursed place. Then, from behind me, a voice clear and threatening whispered, "No escape." And in that moment, I knew the true terror was only just beginning. The air grew dense, suffocating, as if the walls were closing in, and my reflection seemed to smirk back at me, a cruel mockery of my fear. The woman in the room was still there, her finger beckoning me as though she were ensnared by some unseen tether, caught between two realms, life and a chilling death. Each heartbeat resonated louder, drowning out the chaotic whispers, pulling me toward her. Against my better judgment I stepped closer, my feet moving involuntarily as though a force greater than my own will was guiding me. The last fragments of rational thought shattered like the locket on the floor. "What do you want?" I gasped, desperation creeping into my voice as her hollow eyes bore into mine. "Find what was taken," she rasped, her mouth moving slowly, deliberately, as if the words were a struggle. "The truth is buried, and you're the only one who can." A sudden crash interrupted her, reverberating through the house like thunder. I jerked back as a picture frame exploded against the wall, shards of glass showering down, glinting like ominous stars scattered across the floor. My gaze darted around the room, feverishly searching for the source, and when I saw it, the closet was now ajar again, gaping like the maw of a predator, spitting shadows into the room as if they were alive. Against every instinct, I felt the lure of the darkness tugging at my very soul. I inched toward the doorway of the closet, the chaotic sound of the woman's voice merging into the frenetic whispers that curled through the air. "Hurry, find it, before they do." Swallowing my fear, I stepped inside. The shadows thickened, pressing against me, and I realized that the clothing had transformed into a wall of moving blackness, shifting as if concealing something within. As I probed deeper, my fingers brushed against something cold and damp, old leather, worn with time. I pulled it free, revealing an ancient journal, its cover covered in grotesque symbols. Crackling electricity coursed through my veins, electric with dread. The air felt alive, swirling with accusation and despair. As I opened the journal, the fragile pages gave way to more darkness, revealing jumbled scrawls, cryptic notes, and clutching sketches of the very woman I had seen. A flicker of understanding pierced through the fog of fear. She was trapped. "Release me." I heard her voice echo from the back of my mind. The room plummeted into a cold silence, and that waning trust one had in reality flickered. Suddenly, the ground beneath me rumbled, shaking like a living creature. The journal slipped from my grasp, sliding to the floor, and the malevolent shadows danced like a dark choir, chanting words I couldn't comprehend yet seemed to resonate deep within me. "Bind her. Bind them all." A flood of distorted images surged through my mind, faces twisted in anger, shadows flitting past the corners of my vision, and a broken essence clawing for release as a monumental presence churned behind me, unfurling itself like a sinister flower. "Get out!" I screamed, throwing myself out of the closet just as the shadows flared up, merging together to form a menacing figure with elongated limbs and a faceless void that whispered promises of despair. My old reflection in the mirror morphed into an entity of its own, the pale skin becoming a dark canvas as rotted roots crept up my reflection, fusing the horror with my image. "No escape," it hissed, echoing the mocking chant of the house. The laughter of the shadows filled every nook until it grew unbearable, suffocating my heart under its weight. I stumbled back into the foyer, the walls trembling, figures flashing around me, people long gone mocking, crying, all swirling in the silhouette of someone reaching from the mirror towards me. "Help me," whispered the woman, and in that moment, realization hit like a tidal wave. The very fabric of reality was eroding, and I was caught in a vortex on the brink of being devoured whole. And then it happened. The shadows tore the house apart, shaking timber and stone until the floor collapsed beneath me. I plummeted into a void endless and consuming as the last whisper of the house taunted, "Now you're part of the collection." And as the darkness closed in, the last thing I heard was the cry of the woman, echoing through the void, "Find me." My scream was swallowed, and I was lost in a horrifying abyss, where the true terror awaited just beyond human comprehension, just out of reach, but ever so present. The silence that enveloped me was profound, an oppressive stillness that stretched like a tight canvas over my senses. I was suspended in the abyss, my heart thrumming with the echo of the woman's desperate plea. Every breath was a silent scream, every throbbing pulse a reminder of my mortality. Time lost all meaning, it felt both eternal and fleeting, as though I were slipping further away from myself. Then, an insistent whisper began to seep through the heavy darkness, the forgotten voices of the house rising around me like an unsettling chant. They melded into a cacophony, intertwining with fragmented memories that drifted unbidden, laughter echoing from long-dead days, tears of sorrow woven into the fabric of the walls. I clutched at my own existence, trying to remain anchored in this nightmare, but the shadows twisted around me, inviting me deeper into their embrace. My instinct screamed for escape, yet curiosity, that darker twin of fear, urged me forward. It was impossible to suppress the compulsion to uncover the truth. The very essence of their suffering called out to me. "Release, hidden truth," they moaned, their words tinged with desperation. But what did they want from me? A flicker of light pierced the void ahead, pulling my vision toward it like a beacon. I stumbled forward, the darkness clawing at my back, but as I drew closer, the light morphed into an ethereal glow that revealed a long corridor. It was narrow and elongated, adorned with pictures hung askew, their glass warped and dusty. Each frame held a face, each face a story interwoven with the whispers around me. That I stepped into the corridor, a chill racing down my spine as I scanned the walls. The portraits depicted families, smiling parents with children, gleeful memories trapped in a still frame, but the eyes were hollow, staring into an abyss of their own. Unease washed over me, a grave awareness of their silent torment. I knew I was traversing more than just space. I stepped deeper into a memory, a hidden history steeped in tragedy and regret. Fingers grazing the wall, I could feel them, the souls watching, waiting for release. The temperature plummeted, wrapping around me like cold fingers snaking down my spine. Suddenly, one portrait jolted as if animated by unseen hands. A woman I recognized from the closet's depths, the same anguished face, lips moving soundlessly as if connected to a realm beyond my understanding. "Help us," her gaze implored. A cry echoed in response, faint yet urgent, another voice rising from the depths of the corridor. Instinctively, I turned to the darkness at my back, but the abyss had morphed, spiraling into a swirling tempest of shadows, a malevolent vortex threatening to pull me in. I understood then, this was a place for souls tethered by grief, their anguish boiling within the walls. The truth, find it before the night claims you. The woman's plea merged with other voices, an orchestra of despair. Suddenly, the floor heaved beneath me. A monstrous thrum erupted, shaking the corridor, and I was thrown against the wall, the portraits rattling in their frames. In that moment of chaos, one picture shattered, the glass splintering like ice. The figure of the man within it burst forth, not as a ghost but as a corporeal entity forged from the very shadows that pursued me. He lunged forward, eyes blazed with fury and madness. "Leave her!" I shouted, scrambling back, aware that every second counted. My desperate cries fell on ears that wouldn't listen. The swirling mass of darkness shrieked in unison, blending into the haunting visage of the man who emerged. "You can't leave, find the truth," he screamed, his mouth stretching impossibly wide, revealing teeth that glistened with a nameless hunger. I shifted to escape, but the shadows coiled around my legs, a sinister grip binding me. As I struggled, I caught sight of the journal from the closet, now spread open on the floor, the pages fluttering with newfound energy as if something within it was awakening, responding to the chaos. Memories, fragments swirling within the ink, began to rise. From the pages, coalescing into tangible, nightmarish images that swarmed around me, past misdeeds, bittersweet memories, the tragic end of the woman's tale. The tumult brought forth a new presence, a child, lost and anguished, whose wails echoed the depths of my soul. I was on the precipice of unraveling a truth too terrifying to confront, but just as the realization struck a thread of truth hidden within the abyss, the unnerving laughter of the shadows rose in a deafening crescendo, filling the air. "You're too late," they echoed, a chorus of darkness encroaching in layers. I couldn't escape it that I reached for the journal, desperate to grasp whatever gist of knowledge awaited me, but the darkness surged, yanking me backward. As my vision blurred with panic and dread, the shadows and the man bore down upon me, a crushing wave of unholy presence obliterating any chance of retreat. "Find her!" The voices screamed, merging into a final, horrifying declaration that wrapped around my throat like a relentless noose. And then, a new voice broke through the chaos, rich and resonant, echoing from deep within the folds of the shadows. "You are not the first with that." The darkness closed around me, a crushing weight of despair, a final plunge into oblivion, and my scream echoed into silence, as the shadows consumed me. Something deeper awaited, something that knew secrets not meant for mortal ears, a reflection of terror that had only just begun to surface. The world narrows to a pinprick of agony. My scream is swallowed whole, and darkness devours my consciousness, pulling me into a void where nothing stirs and no time exists. The sensation of falling leaves me breathless, yet it is accompanied by the curious weightlessness of floating through water. So familiar is this abyss, yet so profoundly disquieting, that I am left adrift in an ocean of incomprehensible design. When my senses begin to awaken, I find myself on cold, hard ground. The air is thick with a fetid stench, and a low, ominous hum vibrates through the space. I dare to glance around, a gravitational force tugging me toward the memory-laden expanses of the unknown. The room holds an insidious richness cloaked in shadows, each corner steeped in heaviness. It is a cellar, I realize, dank and musty, the walls lined with old wood that creeps toward decay. The gloom pulses with faint light, a distant flicker wavering like a dying ember. Rummaging through the cobwebs of my mind, I grasp fragments of what transpired just before I was consumed by the darkness. The man, the plea for recognition, a promise of revelation hidden in the depths of the horrors that linger here. As I pull myself up, I notice imprints on the floor that carve out a grotesque path like dragging fingers of something that was once alive yet now languishes in the ether of despair. Trembling, I follow the trail into a vast chamber where the flickering light finally comes to rest on what appears to be a makeshift altar. Stacked piles of forgotten relics inhabit the space, each radiating whispers that weave together the fabric of despair that binds them. Reaching for a tarnished locket nestled among crumpled notes, I feel the weight of the past, a tether to sorrow I did not know I possessed. The locket snaps open in my hands, revealing a delicate picture of a child who mirrors the resemblance of the woman from before, wide-eyed and anguished. My heart lurches, and the air thickens, pressing upon my chest as if the very ghosts of the room conspire to suffocate me beneath the yearning of their unsettled souls. A sudden rustle grips my attention. I whirl around, instinctively clutching the locket closer, igniting that same fear I had fought relentlessly. An apparition flickers at the periphery of my vision, a shadow darting past with the lightning speed of desperation. I blink, and it vanishes, but the chill it leaves lingers long after. My skin prickles with the certainty that I am not alone, with each heartbeat echoing like a drum in my ears. I grapple for breath as dread settles deeper into my bones. The shadows in the corners coil tighter, throbbing to a sound of softly murmured cries. The voices entwined in whispers swell, beckoning with mournful urgency. Drawn in, I follow their call, feeling an inescapable pull toward the far side of the room. There, hidden behind a tattered curtain that appears to sway of its own volition, is a doorway shrouded in complete gloom. It hangs ajar, as if inviting me into the very maw of despair. Gritting my teeth against the fear, I push the curtain aside. With a creaking groan, the door swings open, revealing a narrow passage ensconced in an oppressive silence. As I step through, the air grows cold. My breath forms ghostly clouds, and the flitting shadows swirl around me, flickering just out of sight. They whisper my name faintly at first, then with a dissonant urgency, echoing off the stone walls that seem to pulse with the rhythm of a breathing creature. Time begins to fracture. I see fleeting images with each agonizing step, a mother cradling her child, frantic eyes spilling despair, the last moments of laughter collapsing into echoes of screams. Abandoning all pretext of reason, the urgency within me surges as I perceive the depth of their torment, but then an utter stillness. I find myself standing at a precipice, staring into an abyss of darkness deeper than ever before, an insatiable chasm that beckons with instinctual allure and reckless abandonment. The dread coiling within me quakes, urging me to turn back. Just before my resolve shatters, I see it, a dim, pale glow emanating from the bottom of the pit. As if drawn by an instinct older than time, I lean forward. What waits in that abyss could be the truth, or it could be my undoing, but I am compelled to know. Suddenly, a hand shoots out of the void, clammy and cold, grasping my wrist with a vice-like grip. I scream, realizing too late that the otherworldly presence is not a benevolent spirit, but something far more insidious. It pulls me down into the depths, the voice echoing with malevolent laughter, "You have come to join us, to find the truth buried in the layers of past." And just like that, as I am pulled deeper into the abyss, the darkness consumes my final cry, sealing my fate, the weight of secrets pressing down, waiting for the day when someone, perhaps even you, finds the truth lying in the heart of this house. The anguished voice of the abyss faded into a whisper, then silence, as the darkness enveloped me wholly. I felt as though I were suspended in some endless limbo, not falling nor completely freely floating, just caught in the grip of lost time. Images flickered and danced in my mind, the remnants of lives once lived, fading like the last glow of a dying star. A cacophony of echoes brushed against my consciousness, shadows of sorrow pleading and wailing desperately for acknowledgement. Abruptly, I tumbled onto solid ground, the impact jarring, and I gasped as icy air filled my lungs. Around me lay not the dankness of the cellar, but a vast expanse seemingly birthed from my darkest dreams. Moonlight oozed across a desolate landscape riddled with the crumbled remnants of time, scattered tombstones bathed in silver gloom, unkempt grass curling around forgotten names engraved in stone. Nervously, I rose to my feet, brushing off damp earth and age-old sorrow. The oppressive atmosphere squeezed me tight as I paced through the graveyard, trailing fingers over the forgotten epitaphs that whispered my own name in endless lamentation. Lost souls lingered in the air, flickering like old film, their stories echoing through the night: a father's mournful lament, a lover's betrayal, a child's first cry swallowed by fear. Each step felt like an incantation, summoning spirits bound to their resting places. Despite the chill that gnawed at my skin, I could feel warmth radiate from the crumbling stones, beacons of grief longing for release. Tension electrified my skin, every rational voice in my head screamed for me to turn away, yet an insatiable hunger twisted my heart, impelling me forward. Among the crumbling stones, one stood apart: a gnarled oak tree, gnarled trunk twisted like a broken promise, its roots sprawling across the ground resembling grasping hands. Beneath its twisted embrace lay a grave that felt somehow familiar, the name obscured by the grime of abandonment. Compelled now by an unseen force, I knelt before it, the earth beneath vibrating with something sinister. The whispers grew louder, an unsettling harmony that pierced through the air, and from deep within the grave erupted a foul odor, mingled with decay and despair. I covered my mouth, reeling from the stench, when suddenly a chilling breeze swept through the graveyard, carrying voices that felt tangible, pouring rage and sorrow directly into my soul. "Help us," they urged, their joint wail desperate and haunting, "release us from the shackles of this place." My heart hammered as I moved instinctively to expose the disturbed grave. Hands trembling with uncertainty, I began to claw away the dirt, expecting the cool touch of earth but feeling warm, moist soil like flesh beneath my fingertips. The sickening sensation sent waves of nausea crashing through me, but the compulsion surged stronger. I unearthed more, teeth clenched. I tossed aside the dirt until something solid met my hand. What lay before me was a weathered box, ancient and warped, adorned with symbols that danced eerily in the moonlight. An unfamiliar language beckoned me to open it, to delve into the promise of knowledge sealed within. I hesitated, realizing I had finally gripped the means to uncover the buried truths, all carried on the pall of darkness, but as I lifted the lid, expecting revelations, an ear-splitting shriek erupted from the depths of the grave, drowning out the whispers, shaking the very ground beneath me. The sky above roiled, and shadows thickened around the graveyard, enveloping the tree in tendrils of darkness that crept toward me with sinister intent. Time stretched and warped as something cold and relentless surged from the earth, eyes glistening with malicious intent, claws stretched like hungry fingers. I locked eyes with the creature as it emerged, a twisted reflection of despair with elongated limbs, tendrils of darkness uncoiling from its core, a maddening whisper slipping through its jagged grin, a truth that I would never heed. Just as I stumbled back, heart racing, mouth dry, I realized how quickly I'd been ensnared, by the souls nestled atop the endless bones of the forgotten. The box fell from my hands, as a deafening roar pierced the night, promising both revelation and oblivion, and then, from the depths of the grave, a hand erupted, grimy, warm, and impossibly familiar, reaching up to grasp my own. The moment stretched taut, a precipice upon which my very existence dangled, suspended between horror and discovery, as I teetered on the edge of the greatest nightmare ever unearthed. As the hand clasped mine, an electric shock traversed my spine, both a jolt of recognition and raw terror. It was impossibly human, though soaked in the earth, mottled like the darkness surrounding us. I gasped, heart thudding against my ribs, my instinct to pull away clashing with a desperate need to uncover the truth that lurked beneath the surface of this grave. For a moment, time shattered, splintering into jagged edges of memory, clawing at my subconscious. Faces flashed in my mind, ghostly images of those long lost to the passage of time, each one pulling me into their own dark narrative. The shriek of the creature looming beside me drowned the whispers out, vibrating with a life of its own, and yet part of me felt the pull of the hand clawing upwards from the grave, compelling, insistent. "What have you found?" A voice echoed from the shadows, a low growl that wrapped around me like the very chain binding the restless souls. I turned to the looming figure of darkness beside me, its form shifting like smoke, a monstrous perversion molded from every aspect of fear I had ever known. The creature's glowing eyes bored into my soul, and I felt its rage and hunger coalesce like a storm on the horizon. Suddenly, the hand tightened around mine, its grip surprisingly warm, pulsating with an eager melancholy. I looked down, expecting to see a wretched soul, with hollow, sunken eyes staring up at me in despair. Instead, the face of a child emerged from the shadows, a small boy with hollow cheeks and an expression that mirrored my own fear. "Help me," he implored, his voice trembling as though caught in a windstorm. "I've been waiting so long, please, they won't let me go." Every instinct screamed at me to wrench free, to flee the graveyard while my heart still beat in my chest, but how could I abandon this child, a spirit suspended in mourning, his essence tethered to this place? The darkness around us pulsed, the creature silently seething, aware of my hesitation. "What you seek isn't here," the creature hissed, the words slithering into my mind, "but the boy, he can guide you." The shadows yearn for enlightenment, but truth often carries a price. I wrestled with the decision, mind racing with questions. What truths lay beneath these cursed grounds? What dread would I unleash by pursuing them? And yet, the sorrow etched across the boy's features beckoned, a plea that threatened to pierce my hardened heart. "Don't listen to it," the boy yelled, strength blooming in his voice. "You have to dig deeper. You have to set us free. We know what we did, but you must remember." I released the boy's hand with a sudden surge of resolve, feeling tethered to the weight of souls shadowed by despair. I said nothing, but my heart thudded with the knowledge of sacrifice, a readiness to dive into the blackened core of this abysmal riddle. With trembling hands, I delved back into the grave, scrabbling at the dirt as the boy watched, his gaze a tether to hope amidst darkness. I unearthed splintered bones, crumbling artifacts wrapped in the fabric of despair, each piece adding weight to the relentless grief that permeated the air, but then came the laughter, a cackling echo that surged from the depths of the grave itself, slicing through my concentration. The atmosphere thickened, crawling with malignant energies. Shadows danced angrily around me as I dug deeper, consuming thoughts of escape and drowning the flickers of hope that had dared to emerge. I could feel the creature behind me, a malevolent presence stirring restlessly. "It is too late," it rasped, voice drenched in venom. "You will find that some graves are meant to remain undisturbed." A primal instinct surged, clawing its way to the front of my mind. I gritted my teeth, summoning every shred of courage that clung to me, when suddenly the ground trembled violently. With one last desperate lunge, I hit something profoundly hard. I froze, the weight of dread settling cold in my stomach as I stretched fingers over the surface, feeling jagged edges. Another box, larger than the last, its surface pulsating as though alive with anticipation. Before I could pull it free, an anguished howl erupted from the darkness, sending shockwaves through the graveyard. The energies swirled, spiraling outward, threatening to engulf me. The boy's anguished expression of hope shifted to one of horror, and I felt my heart drop as I recognized the timeless warning etched into his gaze. "Don't!" he screamed, but it was too late. My fingers clutched the box, and in that moment, the world roiled. The cacophony of spirits met the shriek of the creature as I wrenched the ancient artifact from the grave, revealing the terrible secrets locked within. But as the lid cracked open, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and snap, and I stood at the precipice of a nightmare unleashed, the shadows swirling into a tempest of terror as an endless scream clawed its way into the night. The boy vanished, leaving only chaos, and the last echoing breath of the creature slid through the cold air as the ground began to collapse beneath me, and just like that, beneath the weight of the earth, I was plunged into abyss, unraveling a horror that had long been entombed, its true nature yet to be revealed. The air shifted, thickening with the scent of decay as I fell into the void. Darkness compressed around me like the grip of a vice, limitless and suffocating, the chaotic remnants of screams echoing somewhere beyond the veil. I struggled against the weight that pressed down upon my chest, fighting the engulfing darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. Time itself felt fragile as I descended, plummeting into an abyss of sound and shadow. My limbs twisted, my heartbeat echoed in my ears. I was both weightless and bound, suspended in an eternal moment that felt cruelly fractured. The only light filtering through was a ghostly glow, illuminating visions of the graveyard's past, forgotten faces twisted in agony, their voices rising as one, a disembodied chorus chanting ancient dirges. As I hit the ground with a thud that jolted my senses, I found myself in a sunken ruins of earth and roots. Around me sprawled a tangled web of gnarled branches, each one twisted like tortured souls clawing at a fading memory. Their essence infused the air with despair, mingling with something that felt hauntingly familiar. Above me, shadows darted with purpose, whispering secrets I was never meant to hear. I squinted against the pallid glow and saw fragments of the boy's face floating in the shadows, locked in an expression of fear, as if trapped in a celestial nightmare. "You have to remember," I heard his voice, small yet fervent, as disembodied as the memories suffocating the air. "Remember what?" I croaked out, fighting my way through the rooted labyrinth, feeling the earth pulse under my feet, alive with something malign, something festering beneath the surface. Suddenly, the glowing haze brightened, and the long-buried walls of the earth began to breathe. Decayed brambles peeled back to reveal an altar, drenched in dark energy, hosting a grotesque spectacle. Atop the stone lay an array of artifacts, each entwined with remnants of human struggle, a chain, rusted and twisted, engulfed by the same creeping fervor that surrounded me. An engraved blade caught the light, reflecting shards of a history stained with betrayal and anguish. "What is this?" I murmured, feeling a tug at my consciousness, a splinter of memory that resonated like an echo. Every artifact sang a different note, every note hinted at a tale shrouded in blood. Somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I felt the faintest flicker of understanding grasping at the frayed edges of remembrance. The fabric of my surroundings began to tear, time collapsed inward, and layers of reality peeled back, exposing another version of myself, a part of me woven into the shadows of the past. I could almost hear the jagged heartbeat of a life long forgotten, pulsing under the altar as a shadowy figure rose from it, a specter, cloaked in darkness, with hollow eyes that shimmered with hatred and longing. "Foolish child," it hissed, voice like gravel scraping against bone. "You should never have come here. You've unwound the truth, and now the consequence is yours to bear." Panic surged through me, igniting a primal fight-or-flight response. I scrambled back, my heart racing as the tormenting figure drew closer, uncoiling the nightmares that slithered behind it, phantoms twisted by despair. They reached toward me with desperate claws, seeking retribution or something far worse. That I inhaled sharply, attempting to silence the rising tide of fear and remembering the boy's voice. "You must find the truth. You need the truth." Clenching my fists, I focused on the artifacts. Each piece seemed to pulse with a frequency resonating through the depths of my very being, but then, the world shook violently. The ground beneath the altar began to tremble, uprooting the nightmares. The specter reeled, swallowed by a churning black mist, anger coiling and writhing in a cacophony of proclamations, truths that shook the air with promises of chaos. And just as I felt the whispers solidifying into a coherent message, the boy's spirit flickered back into view, his face a mask of urgency. "It's not just a memory, it's a cycle, and you are part of it." But before I could grasp the depth of his revelation, the entity unleashed a blood-curdling wail, a sound that rattled through the very bones of the earth. The walls of my crumbling reality jerked and twisted, the altar cracked wide open, spilling dark energy as my surroundings began to collapse with an unholy fury. With a last desperate cry, the boy was swept away, the remnants of his form dissolving into the swirling shadows, and as everything spiraled into chaos, I felt an undeniable pull, dragging me toward the heart of the horror, into the depths of the truth I yearned to unearth. And then, just as quickly, the ground gave way beneath me once more, plunging me back into the unfathomable darkness where something else stirred, something ancient and furious, promising to reveal the last secret buried beneath the weight of human suffering, the final echo of despair resounding just before everything went silent. The end of this descent was far beyond what I could ever prepare for, and in that moment of stillness, something unimaginable stirred, whispering my name. The darkness released me, tossing me like a leaf in the wind back into reality, but it felt different this time, thicker, suffocating. I gasped, breath hitching in my throat as I found myself sprawled on the floor of a cramped, dimly lit space. The walls were layered with peeling floral wallpaper, draped in shadows that seemed to flicker and dance, alive with a sinister energy. The stale air felt charged, prickling at my skin. Panic surged within me once more as I scrambled to my feet, instinctively backing into the corner, my eyes scanning the room. It looked like a child's bedroom, but a grotesque parody of innocence. The bed creaked ominously in the corner, its sheets frayed and stained, the rusted frame enshrined in a shroud of dust that had settled untouched for years. Above, a ceiling fan twisted listlessly, a chilling reminder of lives long extinguished. That I in the far corner, the closet loomed. The heavy wooden door stood ajar, barely illuminated by the flickering bulb that cast eerie shadows across the floor. An inexplicable urge compelled me forward, a magnetic pull that tried to sync with the frantic rhythm of my heart. Find the truth, the boy had urged, echoing in my mind, but I could scarcely recall who he was now, the fear of the spectre still fresh in my memory. As I approached, the odor of damp earth wafted around the base, reminiscent of a grave plot freshly disturbed. I hesitated, feelings of dread crashing over me like waves. Pushing open the door further, it creaked under the weight of history. Dark space loomed beyond the threshold, the depths of it thick with shadows that tangled together in whispers, barely audible but laden with anguish. "Who are you?" I gasped at the dark void within. The air turned frigid as I stepped inside the closet, heart pounding, and as if in response to my question, a low hum resonated from the shadows, a melody discordant, yet hauntingly beautiful. It sent shivers rippling down my spine, drawing me ever closer to the edges of sanity. That I in the corner of the closet, obscured by a tattered blanket, I spotted something grotesque nestled against the wall, a plush toy that seemed out of place in this derelict chamber. Its glassy eyes stared blankly, the smile stitched across its face twisted into a disquieting grimace. I reached out, compelled by something deeper than fear, and as soon as my fingers brushed against its coarse fabric, a sharp gasp filled the air, my own, mingling with an otherworldly echo. Suddenly, the closet door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into complete darkness, the deeper shadows seeping into my thoughts like a thief stealing memories. The temperature plummeted, and I could feel the raw energy swirling around me like a storm. Breathing heavily, I fumbled in the blackness, the plush toy now a lifeline I clutched to my chest. Then, unmistakably, I heard the boy's voice again, this time screaming my name, distorted as if coming from a warped radio transmission. "Wake up! You're losing yourself." A shiver inched down my spine, and in the suffocating black, I felt something latch onto my ankle, cold fingers pulling me down, threatening to drag me into the depths of despair. The walls of the closet throbbed and heaved as grotesque faces began to materialize, stitched from the void, their mouths lined with ragged teeth, wailing silently in regret. That I struggled desperately against the weight of the darkness closing in, clinging to the toy as though it were a life buoy amidst a storm. "No, no, no!" I gasped, my words lost in the growing cacophony of tormented voices, each one clamoring to tell a tale not meant for fragile ears. With a surge of primal instinct, I threw the toy back into the abyss from where it came, hoping to break the trance. The moment it left my hand, the faces surrounding me twisted in anguish, wails of anguish piercing the suffocating silence as they reached for it as if it held the essence of their suffering. Then came a deafening crash, everything fracturing at the seams as the closet buckled under the weight of despair. The air shimmered, my ears buzzed with an unspeakable frequency, pulling at the threads of reality. Just as I felt the very fabric of my existence begin to tear, the door of the closet swung open once more, spilling blinding light into the darkness. A force yanked me forward, hurling me into the room beyond, where the ground trembled ominously, the walls bending as though they were alive, desperate to pull me back into the closet's grasp. And as I landed hard on the floor, gasping for breath, I realized I wasn't alone. A shadow stood at the edge of the light, a haunting outline of a child, his face twisted in grief, lips moving, yet no sound emerged, only sorrow etched into every feature. Then, with a jolt, I recognized him. It was the boy, forever caught in the cycle of fate he had tried to warn me about. His eyes widened as he pointed back towards the closet, now pulsating like a second heartbeat echoing the one inside my chest, and behind him, the dark figure loomed, stepping closer, malicious intent dripping from its every move. In that moment, suspended between fear and revelation, I realized that whatever lay within that closet would not only reveal more of the truth but might also dissolve the fragile boundaries of my sanity. "Find the truth," the boy mouthed again, but now it was my voice that spoke back, echoing through the darkness, "What truth?" And just as the shadows reached their hands toward me, I was pulled into a chilling embrace of despair that promised to unlock the heart of my darkest fears. With the void pressing in, I could only watch as the closet door swung wide, not just revealing darkness, but what truly lurked behind it, a terrifying revelation waiting to unfold. The air felt dense, thickening with an unseen weight as I stood at the threshold of the closet, my trembling hands gripping the frame as if it were the last binding my sanity to reality. Hollow whispers melted into the walls, entangled in the fabric of the room, and everything around me blurred a cacophony of the past, a living nightmare bubbling just beneath the surface that I hesitated for the briefest of moments, heart racing, gut twisting. The boy, the unsettling vision of him haunted me. Still etched into my memory was the grief in his gaze, the urgency of his plea. Find the truth. What truth could possibly remain hidden? I glimpsed the monstrosity in the shadows, a silhouette edging towards my fragility, and suddenly, it became abundantly clear that whatever lay within the closet was no longer a secret. It was a curse entwined with my very being. That I stepped into the void, where darkness clung to me like a shroud, sneaking into the cracks of my mind. The plush toy that had seemed innocent in the dim light now loomed larger than life, a grotesque relic of someone's agony. Was it truly a keepsake, or had it always been the vessel of something far more sinister? I pressed my palm against its fabric, feeling the pulse of life or death within it. Just as I began to drown in the silence, a surge of memories coursed through my veins like ice water. Flickering images sparked from the corners of my mind, laughter dripping with nostalgia, tears spilling in grief, and the man from my previous encounters, the guardian of this abyss. I snatched my hand away from the toy, gasping, "No." As shadows coiled tighter, my scream lost in the shroud of darkness. A sensation gripped me harder than any fear I'd faced before, pulling at my very essence, and I realized with horror that the stories hadn't ended with me. I was merely a thread woven into their tapestry, destined to repeat their horrors. A desperation clawed at the edges of my thoughts. Find the truth, but at what cost? I could feel the gaze of the boy lingering, a reminder of the sacrifice required. Courage surged as I felt the weight of a hidden history overtake me, and I stumbled forward, grasping the decaying remnants of the closet. "What do you want from me?" I gasped. In that moment, the shadows responded, pulsating closer in a violent hunger, and the familiar voice rushed through me, the boy's, pleading, echoing the urgency of the revelation I had yet to confront. "You are more than a visitor, you are a keeper of our secrets. You cannot escape us. You must help us." I realized the truth I sought was not a forgotten tale of lament. It was a mirror reflecting my own despair. The regret had wrapped its claws around my heart, and the boy was not merely a victim but a part of me, a tether I couldn't sever. My memories merged with his grief, and like roots sprawling into my consciousness, they grounded me in a reality I thought I could escape. No. The force of my defiance spiraled through the room, joining the whispers in a resonating scream. But whatever strength I believed I had began to wane as the shadows thickened, the air pulsing with a frantic energy. I could no longer discern my body from theirs, feeling their pain coursing through me. "Release us." I searched for a way to sever the bond, but it felt as if the entire house convulsed in protest, mirroring my anguish. And then, the locket I had disregarded earlier slipped into my line of sight, now gathered in the shadows like a sinister promise. It was the key to unraveling the lineage of pain tightly coiled within my soul. Trembling, I reached for it once more, my fingers igniting with a raw electric shock as memories began to unravel. They splintered like shattered glass. A vision of a woman etched into the deepest recesses of my memory surfaced. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice resonating with the whispers that clawed at my sanity. "You freed the truth but bound yourself." As another echo lingered, the boy's face crystallized before me, eyes wide with the realization of despair. "You're trapped too in our story." My breath caught in my throat, heartsick with the knowledge that had become painfully clear. I was a part of this nightmare, and the secrets of the past would always return to claim me. A roar erupted from the depths, fracturing the air and awakening the spirits entwined in the shadows, their cries melding into a tumultuous symphony of anger. "You must face your own darkness. You hold the key. Unlock it, or be consumed." With the boy's figure dissolving into the shadows, a feral urgency propelled me toward the locket. I fumbled to open it as the world crashed around me, chaos churning in a perfect storm of despair. The imprinted image surged forth, morphing into a face, a reflection of myself, remorse writhing within the contours of my being. This was the truth I had feared, the unyielding embrace of past mistakes, now etched deeply into my very soul. As the shadows writhed and chanted, I understood at last that I was both the seeker and the cursed, haunted by every choice I made and every life that had intersected with mine. The pulse of despair surged through me, intoxicating yet laced with a primal sorrow. "You cannot escape," the malevolent voice hissed as it coiled around me, and I felt the chilling embrace of inevitability squeeze tight. "You will live forever in this cycle." Then a blinding flash illuminated the shadows, and my vision flooded with the memories of those long-lost lives intertwined with my own screams rising to an unbearable height. I could feel their pain enveloping me. I was no longer in control, slipping through the painstaking fabric woven by grief and despair, and in that fleeting moment, as the shadows closed in, I realized the unnerving truth. That even if I emerged from the darkness, it would never truly leave me. The last sob escaped my throat before time fractured again, and I was pulled into an endless loop, spiraling into the darkness, clinging desperately to my past, a prisoner of my own making. But with every heartbeat, I also heard the boy's haunting whisper fade into the distance, "You cannot outrun your reflections." Darkness enveloped me once more, the weight of the locket in my hand a reminder that the cycle of horror was eternal. It would continue unwinding like threads in a tapestry, and I would always be caught in its web, a haunting echo that would never truly end. Just before everything faded to stillness, the final voice rang clear in my mind, chillingly articulate in a truth I could never escape: "You are now part of the collection."